What happens when armed officers raid a celebrity's home with AR-15s, find absolutely nothing, and then sue him for talking about it? In August 2022, deputies kicked down Afroman's door while his children were inside. No drugs, no kidnapping victims, no charges, just a destroyed home and a department that laughed when asked to fix it. So, Afroman made a song. Now those same officers want nearly $4 million, and Afroman is in the fight of his life. If you live in America, there is a case you should have been following with complete attention, because what happened in a small Ohio courtroom does not just affect one rapper. It affects every single person in this country who has ever held a phone, owned a security camera, or believed they had the right to speak about what the government does to them. It centers around a celebrity with the name Joseph Foreman, known to the world as Afroman, the man behind Because I Got High, a track with over 300 million YouTube views. Armed sheriff's deputies raided his home, found nothing, charged him with nothing, then sued him for talking about it. And on March 18, 2026, a jury delivered its answer. August 21, 2022, Afroman was not home. He was in Chicago when neighbors called to tell him that Adams County Sheriff's deputies had descended on his Winchester, Ohio property with a search warrant tied to allegations of drug trafficking and kidnapping. A confidential informant had allegedly told investigators that Foreman kept women locked in his basement and was running a drug operation out of his home. The deputies broke down his front door. They swept every room. They went through his clothes, his belongings, his cash, and they found absolutely nothing. No drugs, no kidnapping victims, no evidence of any crime. Not a single charge was ever filed. What they left behind was destruction. The front gate torn apart, the door smashed off its hinges, security cameras cut mid-raid while his children watched. Over $5,000 in cash seized, returned later but $400 short. The sheriff's office called it a miscount of exactly 400 even dollars. When Afroman approached the department about fixing the damage to his property, the officer laughed at him, said they were not required to pay for anything, and walked away. Afroman said it plainly in an interview days after the raid. "They come up here with AR-15, traumatize my kids, destroyed my property, kick in my door, rip up and destroy my camera system." He also told reporters, "They didn't have to run up my driveway with AR-15s and all kinds of assault weapons. I would have gladly just given that to them." Not a single woman was found in any basement. Not a single drug trafficking operation was uncovered. The tip that sent armed officers sprinting up his driveway with military-grade rifles pointed at the home of a man who was not even there came from one unnamed informant, and that informant faced zero consequences for what followed. This is where it gets uncomfortable, because the question is not just what those deputies did that day. The question is what a department does when it knows it made a mistake, broke a man's property, scared his children, and got caught on camera doing it. The Adams County Sheriff's Office answered that question in the clearest possible way. They did nothing. And when Afroman started talking about it, they tried to make him stop. Afroman's response was not a lawyer's letter. It was an album. He called it Lemon Pound Cake, named for the moment in his own security footage where one of the deputies, guns drawn, supposedly hunting kidnapping victims, stopped to apparently stare at a cake his mother had baked and left on the kitchen counter. He dropped, "Will you help me repair my door?" which was nothing but raw raid footage set to a vocal asking those deputies to fix what they broke. Then, "Why you disconnecting my video camera?" Then more. He named every officer involved. He put their faces on t-shirts. He sold merchandise. He used every dollar to cover the $20,000 in damage the department refused to acknowledge. The videos exploded. Millions of views on YouTube and TikTok. The internet watched armed officers tear through a man's home and find a lemon pound cake, and they responded with the kind of rage that comes from recognition. Because every person who has ever felt powerless in front of a badge understood immediately what they were watching. And a small sheriff's department in Adams County, Ohio, the same one that had sent those officers in and come up empty, watched their faces spread across the internet and decided the real problem was Afroman's songs. In March 2023, 7 of them sued him. Deputies Sean D. Cooley, Justin Cooley, Michael D. Estep, Sean S. Grooms, Brian Newland, Lisa Phillips, and Randolph L. Walters Jr. filed a civil lawsuit: defamation, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress. They claimed his content damaged their reputations and generated death threats. They wanted damages. They wanted a court order forcing him to stop permanently. They wanted the man whose door they had kicked in to pay them for the embarrassment of being caught on his own cameras doing it. Now, if you want the full story on how this played out, every detail of the trial, the testimony, and the verdict, stay with us, because the next part of this story is where the real implications surface. The trial opened March 16, 2026 at Adams County Common Pleas Court in Winchester, Ohio. And from the moment Afroman walked through those courthouse doors, he made clear he had not come to apologize. He arrived in a red, white, and blue suit with matching sunglasses, dressed deliberately like the Constitution he was there to defend. Day 1 focused on Afroman's social media posts. The deputy's attorneys played his videos in open court, showed his Instagram posts naming officers, displayed the merchandise bearing their faces. Their argument was built around exposure, that Foreman had taken men and women performing their jobs and turned them into targets for a hostile and dangerous public. Then on day 2, Afroman took the stand himself. He looked at that jury and said the thing he had been saying since August 2022, in interviews, in songs, in Instagram posts, and now under oath. All of this is their fault. If they hadn't wrongly raided my house, there would be no lawsuit. I would not know their names, they wouldn't be on my home surveillance system, and there would be no songs. My money would still be intact. He told the court he used footage from his own cameras on his own property, that every video, every post, every t-shirt was a direct response to destruction the department caused and refused to fix. And he closed with the 5 words that are the entire backbone of his defense: I have the right to my freedom of speech. Not as a legal strategy, as a statement of fact about what America is supposed to be. The deputies presented a different portrait of what those videos did to real people's lives. Deputy Lisa Phillips had been called in off-duty the day of the raid. She was not scheduled to work. She showed up on her own time, ended up on Afroman's security cameras, and became the central figure in a 13-minute music video packed with suggestive content directed specifically at her. Accusations about her gender, her sexuality, her professional conduct broadcast to millions of strangers. On day 1 of this trial, that video was played in open court. Phillips broke down in tears on the witness stand while it ran. She told the jury through her tears, I've always been a go-getter. I try to do my best to help people out, and then you have people hollering at you saying things like being a thief, having a sex change, prove I have a vagina. Sergeant Randy Walters testified about the harassment he said followed him after the videos spread. During cross-examination, he confirmed that Afroman had called him a son of a bitch, but then qualified it by saying those specific comments had not been published online. That qualification carries real legal weight in a defamation case built entirely around what was publicly broadcast. The legal threshold is not what was said in private, it is what was put in front of millions of people. And Walters, under oath, confirmed the most personal attack he could identify had not cleared that bar. Court documents confirmed that multiple officers received death threats from members of the public after the videos went viral. That is not a disputed fact, it is in the record. And the deputy's attorneys made sure the jury heard every detail of it. The argument they were making was that Afroman did not just criticize those officers. He pointed a crowd of millions at them, and some of those people responded with violence. Whether the First Amendment protects speech that produces that outcome, even when that speech is documented truth about public officials, was the precise question this jury had been asked to answer. Before this trial even started, the system handed the deputies a significant structural advantage, and it is one of the most important details in this entire case that is not being discussed enough. Afroman had filed his own countersuit. He accused those deputies of destruction of property, trespassing, illegal search and seizure, and mishandling of the cash they seized. He wanted the broken door, the destroyed gate, the disconnected cameras, the missing $400, all of it formally on the record in front of a jury. He wanted the raid itself to be on trial. In February 2026, Judge Jonathan Hine dismissed every single one of those counterclaims. Not after a hearing, not after oral arguments, with what Afroman described as a click of a button in some little office somewhere. Gone. The practical consequence of that dismissal is staggering when you think about it clearly. The jury asked to evaluate this case was only permitted to consider what Afroman did after the raid, not what the deputies did during it. The broken door was not before them. The cut cameras were not before them. The children who were home, the seized cash, the laughing officer who told a man his department was not required to fix what it destroyed. None of that was legally in front of this jury. The man whose home was raided walked into trial as the defendant, while the officers who conducted that raid walked in as the plaintiffs, with the judge having already cleared the field of everything that would have contextualized why Afroman said what he said. That structural reality is what makes this case genuinely disturbing beyond the surface-level celebrity narrative. The legal system that was being asked to determine whether Afroman's freedom of speech deserved protection already made one decision before the trial began, that his version of events, the version documented on his own cameras, was not worth hearing. The American Civil Liberties Union did not stay on the sidelines for this one. In 2023, they filed an amicus brief in the case and called the deputies' lawsuit nothing short of absurd. They described it plainly as a slap suit, a strategic lawsuit against public participation, a legal weapon used not to pursue genuine justice, but to financially exhaust and permanently silence a private citizen who had the audacity to criticize public officials. The ACLU's core argument is one that courts have consistently upheld for decades. There is nothing the First Amendment protects more fiercely than the right of ordinary citizens to criticize people in positions of government power. When those deputies entered Afroman's home with a search warrant, they were public officials performing an official act in a private citizen's space. The footage of that act, captured on cameras he owned, on property he owned, belongs to him. His right to broadcast it, sing about it, sell T-shirts about it, and mock every officer in it is, according to the ACLU, not a close legal question. It is exactly what the First Amendment was designed to protect. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression landed on the same conclusion and went further in spelling out what a verdict against Afroman would mean in practice. They warned that a guilty verdict here would be chilling, that it would function as a direct message to every American who has ever filmed a police interaction, posted security camera footage, or spoken publicly about what law enforcement did to their family. If these 7 deputies had won this case, the legal door would have opened for police departments across the country to use civil defamation litigation as a systematic suppression tool. Not criminal prosecution, not government censorship. Something quieter and arguably more effective, private civil lawsuits that cost defendants everything even when they did nothing wrong. Every homeowner who films a raid and puts it online would face that calculation. Every person who makes art about what was done to them in their own home would face that calculation. And most of them, unlike Afroman, would not have a fan base of millions backing them financially and publicly while they fight it. That is not a theoretical concern being raised by civil liberties advocates looking for controversy. That is the documented direct implication of the legal precedent this jury was being asked to set. And it is why this case, which started with a small-town Ohio Sheriff's Department and a lemon pound cake, became one of the most watched First Amendment trials in the country. The verdict came on the evening of March 18, 2026, and it was absolute. Judge Jonathan Hine read it aloud in Adams County Common Pleas Court. In all circumstances, the jury finds in favor of the defendant. No plaintiff verdict prevailed, so the matter will be concluded with defense verdicts. Not one claim, not most of them, all 13. Every single count the deputies had filed, defamation, invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, the jury rejected every one of them. The deputies had collectively sought nearly $4 million in damages. They walked out with nothing. Tears streamed down Afroman's face the moment the verdict was read. Then he stepped outside, still in that red, white, and blue flag suit, and he let the country know what had just happened. "We did it, America," "Yeah, we did it! Freedom of speech! Right on! Right on!" He later told reporters, "It's not only for artists, it's for Americans. We have freedom of speech. They did me wrong and sued me because I was talking about it." The jury had not taken long. Deliberations began in the late morning on March 18th. By that evening, it was over. 8 people in Adams County, Ohio, sat through 3 days of testimony, watched those videos in open court, heard a deputy cry on the stand, and watched Afroman in a flag suit tell them the truth as he lived it. And then they came back with the clearest answer the law allows. Think about what it took to get to that moment. A department received a tip from one unnamed informant. That tip alleged kidnapping, drug trafficking, women locked in a basement. Deputies obtained a warrant, assembled in tactical gear, and ran up a driveway with AR-15s pointed at a home where a man's children were present, and the man himself was not even there. They broke down the door. They went through every room. They found a lemon pound cake. They seized $5,000 in cash and came up $400 short. They disconnected the cameras. They laughed when asked to fix the damage. And then, when the man who owned that home used the footage their own conduct had generated to speak publicly about what they had done, they sued him for nearly $4 million. The jury said no. The lawsuit did not quiet Afroman. It never did. Every legal analyst watching this case noted the same irony, that the deputies who wanted their names scrubbed from the internet are now among the most searched names in America. The lemon pound cake video alone has been viewed more than 3 million times on YouTube. The videos that were supposed to disappear under legal pressure received more attention than ever because of the trial. The department that wanted to teach Afroman a lesson about speaking out gave him a national platform, a 3-day jury trial covered from coast to coast, and a unanimous verdict that now belongs permanently to the public record. The defense lawyer summarized it clearly in closing arguments. No reasonable person would expect a police officer not to be criticized. The jury agreed. And in agreeing, they answered the question this case had always really been asking. Not whether Afroman was polite, not whether his songs were fair, not whether the deputies felt humiliated. The question was whether a citizen has the right to use his own footage, his own cameras, his own voice, to tell the public what armed government officials did inside his home. The jury's answer was yes. Unambiguously, unanimously, on every count, yes. There are sheriff's departments all over this country that were watching this case very carefully, waiting to see whether civil defamation litigation could function as a suppression tool against citizens who filmed their interactions with law enforcement. They have their answer now, too. And there are millions of ordinary people who were watching it alongside them, waiting to see whether the law still belonged to them. The verdict says it does. For now. Because this case ends with a win, but the conditions that created it have not changed. The unnamed informant who triggered that raid faced no consequences. The officers who broke a man's door and laughed when asked to fix it faced no consequences from their department. The counterclaims Afroman filed, the broken gate, the missing cash, the disconnected cameras, were dismissed before the jury ever sat down. The legal fight Afroman won was fought on a battlefield the system had already tilted against him. He won anyway. But most people in his position never make it to a jury at all. Afroman walked into this case the same way he has faced everything since that day in August 2022. Unafraid, unsilenced, dressed like the flag of the country whose constitution he was there to defend. He told that jury the truth as he lived it, and they believed him. The question he put in front of America, whether freedom of speech is still real in this country when it embarrasses the people with the guns and the badges, has an answer tonight. A jury of 8 people in Adams County, Ohio, delivered it, and it will outlast the lawsuit, the videos, and every song he ever made about a lemon pound cake. Drop your thoughts in the comments right now. Do you think this verdict was the right call? And if you want to see more accurate news coverage, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. this story is not finished.